Today we've got a great revenge story against a peanut butter thief. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, I gave inside info to an interview candidate. I interviewed for a job. I did not get selected for the next round. I was a bit bitter about it. The feedback was they wanted someone with more experience in X. I didn't have that much experience in X, so that seemed fair. I found out today that of the 2 people in the final round of interviews, only Lisa has more experience in X than I do. The other candidate, Bart, has 0 experience in X, but is a preferred candidate because they have a VP sponsoring them. Freak that noise. I reached out to Lisa and asked her for coffee. During coffee, I told her the format of the second round interview, what the questions will be, who will be on the panel, and what they're looking for from the responses. Lisa probably didn't need my help and could have gotten it on her own merit, but freak favoritism and work politics. I'm with OP on this one. You tell me, hey, we didn't go forward with you because you just do not have enough experience with so-and-so. Absolutely, okay, I understand that. But I have some choice words when they go and they turn around and hire somebody that also doesn't have any experience in X. Like, I'd have rather of them just told me they don't like me or something. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy awesome stories of revenge, it would be amazing if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to my podcast. That said, our next story is, I watched her eat the whole thing. In high school, I dated this guy for 4 years. He was my first love, first everything. I was attached for sure. A couple of years in, I started hearing rumors that he was cheating on me at parties. Of course, he denied this. Then I got proof. He begged for forgiveness and, like an idiot, I took him back. This was a continuing cycle. I was never angry at the girls, only him. Because they didn't know me or maybe even know of me, they owed me nothing. It was his choice to betray me. Until I met who we will call Karen. She went to a different high school. We met at a party and hung out all night. My boyfriend was also there, and I talked all night about how much I love him. I also shared the pain I'd been through with him. She was there for me, and it seemed like I'd met a new friend. Then about a week later, my boyfriend's friend lets me know that Karen and my boyfriend hooked up a couple of nights after I'd met her. This was the final straw. I angrily ended things for good with dude's cheating butt. This was kind of a new betrayal for me. It almost hit deeper. I was enraged. This time it was different. She knew who I was. She'd been acting like a friend. I wanted to unload all of my pain on her. Whether I was right or wrong, that's how I felt. The problem was we went to different schools and I would never run into her, except when she would come into my work, which was often. This totally sucked. I had to be all nice to her and act like nothing happened. So, one day, I was tasked with making her sandwich. That is when I decided I would have a little silent/petty revenge. First off, the floors in this restaurant were filthy. So I smeared each slice of turkey all over them, then I added a few moldy sliced tomatoes that were meant to be thrown away. I then delivered the sandwich to her, and we exchanged the same fake smiles we'd been giving each other for weeks. I went back behind the counter and watched her eat every bite. I was satisfied, and the anger was gone. Just a general good life rule: if you screwed somebody over at some point in their life, probably not a good idea to accept food from them that you yourself haven't seen get assembled or made. Lord knows if I slept with somebody else's partner and then later on there's a point where they're bringing me and hand delivering me a sandwich, in no way am I going to sit there, look at that sandwich and go, yeah, this is probably fine, I'll just eat it blindly. Honestly, I think I'd probably start dissecting it and looking for some kind of issue. I mean, shoot, how do you not notice a moldy tomato? This next story is hack my account, enjoy all the spam. A few months ago, I suddenly received an email from Instagram that someone was trying to break into my account and recommend that I make sure everything was secured. Sure enough, when I checked all the devices logged into my account, I found 3 unknown fake profiles. I did my best trying to knock the hacker out and even reset my password. However, the hacker still got the upper hand, changing both the password and the email attached to the account. If you've ever been hacked through your Instagram profile, you'll know that the social media site does the absolute minimum to get it retrieved for you. I've been hacked twice on Facebook, and both times they successfully recovered my account. Yet, when it comes to Instagram, it doesn't matter how many times an account can be reported, they'll do nothing. Even when you try to log back in to recover the account by taking a photo, it doesn't even work. So here they were, parading under my name trying to promote their crypto earnings. I have another account set up, and while I wasn't devastated by the loss of my 10-year-old social media account, I was more ticked off that the hacker was getting away with using my account. I know that they still use it because my aunt actually thought I'd bought a car recently and even commented on the photo. Overall, I just wanted to get back at them. That's when I remembered the notification Instagram had sent me, letting me know that the email for the account had been changed. The email, name and all, was just sitting there plain as day. Cue my petty revenge. I began internet surfing for anything, site, or store I could use to subscribe my hacker through their Gmail account. Maybe the hacker is a parent. So here's some mommy blog updates. What if they want to know their horoscope on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis? Here's a few astrology sites to keep them updated. And let's not forget that they'll need to shop at CVS every once in a while. And if you've ever had an email from them, you'll know that they go all out to spam your inbox. I'm thinking next of clothing stores because you never know if the hacker will need some new places to shop. So, unfortunately for OP, this might just be some junker temporary email they made to take over the account that they're not all too worried about the inbox being blown up over. It's probably just one email set aside from dozens that the only thing they're worried about is the Instagram account attached to it. And even on that, it's really easy to just make a filter where all you have is Instagram and everything else just gets sent off to some other folder. Our next story is Honk at me for not making a dangerous left turn. Enjoy waiting another 2 minutes for the light to change. I was in the left turn lane with a car behind me. There was an oncoming vehicle, and I decided it would be too dangerous to turn, so I waited for the car to pass. The vehicle behind me started honking because I wasn't moving. I ignored him. I started inching forward after the car passed, and the guy behind me started honking again because I didn't immediately turn. At that point, I've had enough. I slammed on the brakes and just stopped in the left turn lane for 20 or so seconds, despite there being no oncoming traffic. Guy behind me is honking like crazy. I waited until the light turned amber before turning, forcing the guy to be stuck at a red light for at least another 2 minutes. I mean, I get it if you're sitting at like a red light and it turns green and the person's just not moving, but when it comes to turn lanes or turning onto a road in general, and there comes a situation where they could have made it if they gunned it, but they didn't, I think it is a jerk move to honk at those people. Bottom line, when you're driving, you've got to prioritize your safety first and foremost. If you weren't comfortable turning or merging at that point, honestly, try not to let somebody even honking behind you motivate you to do anything different other than wait for the right time. Our next story is drug dealer went to jail, dad got a free car. Okay, so a little context on this. It was late 90s or early 2000s. Also, this happened in one of the biggest counties in Florida, alright? Alright, so growing up, my dad was never there. He's been to prison 8 times and just doesn't really care about me or any of my brothers throughout Florida. But me being the oldest, I still kinda had a brother thing going on with him. So he kinda didn't try to hide any things around me, but I remember he was doing a lot of coke. I mean, to the point he had to figure something out to get on a regular basis without spending money. That's where Dean came in. He was a huge coke dealer and had multiple warrants for different things. So he made my dad an offer. Go to the DMV, meet with the info lady, but when you get transferred to the photo side to get your photo and license printed, they would send you to a other side. Well, somehow they switched and he got an ID with my dad's info and his photo. Well, fast forward, dude gives my dad like half, and my dad never sees him again. Well, I guess the guy went and got a car and everything under my dad's name, a Mitsubishi Eclipse. So when he was finally arrested, the police called my dad to pick up his car. I never saw a cokehead make it to the police so fast. I mean, dude didn't pay him, and he ended up with that car for a few years for nothing. I'm just curious, although he went and got what amounts to be his car back, if the dealer was like serious enough, and I mean he had like multiple warrants, right? So sounds like he was at least definitely in the game. I'd be curious if it made OP's father kind of watch over their shoulder a lot. Because not only did they do that favor and get a bunch of Coca-Cola for free, but they also took the dude's car. And there's only really like 2 places that car could have gone, right? Our next story is, keep being a jerk, you won't score today or ever. Back when I was with the French Republican Guard, I had a chief, first rank above the standard guard, that was a total jerk. He was so entitled and annoying. He was pulled out of guard duty for the different official buildings, pulled out of the motorcycle squad, couldn't get there anymore, they would shoot him on sight with machine guns, left to rot managing the parking space of the barracks. Now, the barracks had something like 70-ish parking spaces, 99.99% of them long-term, which in fact resulted in him having to take care of 2 spots that would get booked on a day-to-day basis. His behavior? Kiss butt with the powers, bully with anyone beneath him. He kind of never understood why every time he tried to show off in front of young girls, 16 to 19, who came here for the National Defense Discovery Day, loosely translated, term doesn't have an equivalent that would speak to you. Every time on one of these days, he would welcome the girls, and guys, but he didn't give them as much attention. The first part would be perfect, but strangely, every single time the group of teens would take their first break for a coffee or something, his fame would blow out. Not like we waited in ambush to reveal the truth about him, including the missing gold band on one of his left fingers. This entitled jerk would allow a commandant to try to bring a huge truck from the front entrance. We told him it would get stuck. He wouldn't listen and try to placate the commandant and get the truck stuck half blocking traffic, more than an hour. For as long as he took upon himself to welcome the teens, we always made sure one of us was there to mess with him. Still glad we helped you avoid infidelity, Chief. How's your wife? She would boss him away like a chihuahua. Honestly, it's for the best that they protected all of those kids and young adults from that kind of guy. I think this goes beyond a revenge. This isn't just like making sure he doesn't get any. This is just protecting innocent girls from a sleazy guy who's on a mission for only one thing. This next story is Chinese fire drills are stupid, and so am I. Hello everyone, I have a story that dates back when I was in college in 2002. I'd like to say right now, while this was petty revenge, it was wrong. Please do not do this. I was stupid, my roommate was stupid, the whole thing was stupid. That said, one Sunday afternoon, my roommate and I were returning from a trip to the grocery store. After a while, we decided to take an alternate route back to our dorm. We lived in a small town, so taking alternative routes through neighborhoods was easier than the large streets. Then an old Oldsmobile turned onto the street in front of us. No issue. Eventually, we stopped in front of a stop sign at an intersection in the neighborhood. Suddenly, the Oldsmobile's doors open up, and out came 5 young girls, either late teens or early 20s. My roommate and I were a little stunned. We thought something wrong had happened. Then all the girls started running around the car laughing. They ran around for almost 5 minutes. It was bizarre. My roommate then shook his head and said the girls were trying to do a Chinese fire drill. Note for those who don't know, a Chinese fire drill is when you stop at a red light and get out and all the occupants run around the vehicle and trade places. You're supposed to do it quickly before the light turns green. Not exactly safe, but it's supposed to be fun. Anyway, the girls are in front of my vehicle, running around, laughing, and not getting back into the car. As I said before, they were out for about 5 minutes. It was annoying. Finally, they all got into the car and drive off. I'm still behind them. I'm a little worried they'll try it again, but I can't turn off and drive a different direction, so we come together to another stop sign. Roommate said he's sure they'll try it again and that they didn't do it right before. Also, he notes he wasn't sure if you're even supposed to do it at a stop sign. Well, they did it again. This time they get out and run around longer. One even ran to the other side of the street and back. This is the I'm stupid part. I was having a rough week, and this just annoyed me. Roommate notes the girls might have their car in neutral. What do? I slowly creep behind the car and gently bump it. Turns out it was in neutral, so I start pushing the car forward. The girls suddenly realize what's going on and start yelling at me. I ignore for another minute, but then reverse. The girls immediately get into their car and speed off. I felt pretty good that day. My roommate thought it was hilarious. Yeah, no, looking back on it, pushing a car into an intersection is horrible. I could have caused damage or much, much worse. I'm a lot wiser now, and I know that was insane. I've had this happen again in other places. I just try to turn down another street. Yeah, you definitely don't do a Chinese fire drill at a stop sign, and you're definitely supposed to just do like one cycle around and hop back in the car. I think these girls honestly just had nothing to do and were out to annoy OP and their friend. Our next story is My Grandpa's Final Petty Revenge Beyond the Grave. My grandparents had 5 children and 12 grandchildren. I am the oldest grandchild. All of their children settled down within 10 miles of their house. Growing up, we did everything as a whole family. My dad raised beef, cattle, and pork. My grandma had a garden that she would feed the entire family from. The women would get together at grandma's house and we would can all of the fruits, vegetables, and meat the family would need. Then she would distribute it out to each individual family. She would have my grandpa carry all of the canned goods she was keeping to their basement. My grandpa absolutely hated green beans. He would ask grandma not to can so many for them because he didn't want to eat them. But she didn't listen to him, but he dutifully carried them to the basement. My grandpa died in July 2000 and we just celebrated his 100th birthday. I still miss him. My grandma died in March 2011. When we were clearing out the basement, because a lot of us were storing stuff there, we kept finding random jars of green beans. Then we started finding crates of green beans under shelves. There were about 6 of us cleaning out the basement, and by the time we were done, we found about 2,000 jars of green beans. We had the jars stood up in the center of the big room and we were just standing around looking at it, wondering why we found so many green beans. Then I started giggling. My aunt wanted to know what was so funny. I said, "Grandpa did this." She asked, "Why do you think that?" "Because he hated green beans, so he hid them so he wouldn't have to eat them," I giggled. That made everyone laugh. "What do we do with them now?" I asked. The jars were dated from 1982 to 2000, and it was 2011 at the time. Honestly, at that point, I would say if you've got enough land somewhere, I would say dig a hole and just start dumping the jars out there. Deep enough or just dumped out in general in a place where hopefully wildlife won't get to them, where they can be harmed by spoiled food. And then depending on the jars, you can either resell them or if they're aluminum cans or something, you could take them to a recycling center and either way, you've made some kind of money off it. If it's just a classic canning mason jar, I don't know how you're going to resell 2,000 of them. But it certainly doesn't hurt to check out the Facebook Marketplace. Our next story is Be Nice to the Janitorial Staff. This happened in 1986. The locations and persons involved shall be nameless. I was working security and investigations for a large firm that had major clientele in the refinery business. They had a group of buildings within close proximity of each other, and this allowed the standard night security personnel to have easy access to all locations. While visiting one of the sites on a weekend, one of the guards commented that someone was complaining about a stench coming from the west side of the 4th floor and the next building earlier in the day. I decided to accompany them to that area to determine the source of the odor. As we exited the elevator, an awful smell permeated the air to the point of making us gag. Since it was after work hours, we used a master key to check a few of the offices. It was a hot July day, and we were certain we would find someone deceased in their office. Although I'd never been unlucky enough to smell a dead person up to this point, we searched a few of the offices to include the one where the smell was the strongest. Policy states that we were not to open cabinets or closets, so we left it at that and assumed someone had something rotten in their trash earlier in the day, and although the janitorial staff had removed it, the smell lingered. That following Monday, I received a call by the guard service to report to the subject building, as they had discovered the source of the noxious odor. As it turned out, the gentleman's office where the odor was the strongest had a giant turd in the desk drawer, in the hot corner office. The heat from the sun shining through the window on the previous days had created such a noxious odor that it didn't have the smell of feces. Aside from this poor guy, his receptionist was a victim as well. She was so traumatized, she was asked to take the remainder of the week off to recover. Poor lady. As the investigation was opened, we concluded that the 2 victims had a run-in with 2 janitorial staff members in the previous weeks, which resulted in the termination of 2 janitorial staff members. To get their revenge, they talked their former co-workers into letting them in the office so they could do their deed. Revenge was best served hot and stinky. A week later, the receptionist returned to her desk with flowers and well wishes waiting for her. She was quite happy. Of course, waiting for her were reports that had to be filled out and turned into the home office to account for her excusal and to assist in closing the investigation. As she thanked those that wished her a happy return, she sat at her desk and prepared for her daily routine. It was at this time she reached over and pressed the dispenser of her hand lotion to put lotion on her delicate hands. As she did this, a horrid stench flowed from the bottle, which was filled with rancid urine that had been sitting and fermenting in the bottle for well over a week and a half. The receptionist was so distraught over the experience that EMTs were called to attend to her. So traumatized was she, I don't believe she ever returned to her job after that. Revenge was served old and cold. I left the business shortly after that experience to seek out better opportunities. It was a crap job anyway, pun intended. Whether they're still working alongside you or on their way out, I think the last people you want to upset is the janitorial staff, because A, if they're still working alongside you, you don't want them to go subpar or do any kind of malicious revenge against you or the areas you work in. B, they're on their way out, they might feel like they have just about nothing left to lose. Our next story is, didn't like me before my glow up? Hope you enjoyed being turned down in front of your friends. When I was younger and first came out as a lesbian, I didn't have much luck with dating other women. In my early days of coming out, I met this girl at a gay bar. We hit it off instantly and I managed to get her number. After a few days of texting, I noticed her getting dramatically drier over text. Eventually, we stopped talking. I was pretty sad about this since she was one of the very few women I had any experience with at the time. One day, she randomly texted me late at night to meet her at a bar, and so I did. We had a fun night together and hopped around to a few places. The next morning, she didn't text or say anything, so neither did I. A few weeks passed and we didn't speak to each other. One night, I was at the bar where we met, and I saw her coming in with her friends. I walked over to her and waved, and she looked at me and walked right by like she didn't know me. I know she had seen me because her eyes glanced quickly in my direction. Later on in the night, she bumped into my friend and said hi to him. Turns out she did see me. She just didn't care to engage with me. Fast forward 6 years later, at this point, I was more confident, went through numerous phases of glow-ups over the years, and was in 2 pretty serious relationships. I lost a great deal of weight, my skin cleared up once I finished university, I learned how to do my makeup and what worked best for my hair. My fashion sense had also significantly improved. I eventually learned that the issue I was having with women was due to a lack of experience in the lesbian dating world. Regardless of that, I never forgot that moment. Nothing stings worse than having a fond memory of someone than realizing that it meant nothing to them. I've been with first-timers and I've never treated them like that. One day I was at a gay event with my friends and she was there as well. I was pretty surprised since I hadn't seen her in so long. I went to university in a different city. I didn't approach her, but I saw her looking at me from the corner of my eye. I noticed her friends looking in our direction as well. One of my friends told me she kept looking my way, but I avoided eye contact. I eventually walked towards the washroom and passed by her and her friends. She looked the same but a little more run down. She grabbed my shoulder and was like, "Hey OP, oh my god, it's been so long. How have you been?" I looked like a deer in headlights, mostly because I didn't think she would talk to me. I took a glance over at her friends who were also looking at me. I apologized and told her that I think she had me mistaken for someone else, and quickly walked away. I'll be honest, it didn't feel great at first. Then I remember how humiliated I felt back then, and all the regret left my body. I mean, the one nice thing about this is you know that they are completely fake. They're only talking to you because they're interested in you post-glow up. At least you have that knowledge of how they hurt you before, so they can't make the same mistake now. I saw somebody comment a great saying on this post: "The tree remembers what the axe forgets." This fake person probably had no recollection of how they hurt OP at all. Our next story is, she was my shoulder to cry on, but also going up with X. I made friends with the girl, we were both in our late 20s, who lived in the apartment above me. We'll call her Stacy. Stacy and I instantly clicked, became best friends over the year and a half. Most nights she was hanging out with me at my place, eating dinner together and just being great girlfriends. I was super excited about our friendship. I was such a loner in high school and very introverted afterwards. I never really had a super close friend. During our friendship, I started dating someone. We all became pretty good friends, including with a few of his friends. After about 6 months, me and the guy broke up. I was heartbroken. Over several months, Stacy was such an attentive friend. She would call or pop over to check on me daily. She would bring me ice cream or cocktails and just be there for me. I was so thankful to have her as my friend. A few months after the breakup, me and the guy kinda started communicating again. Not a lot, but enough to give me hope. Whenever he called, I instantly would tell her, so giddy about it. Then he would disappear for a bit. A lot of back and forth like that. One day, all of my friends, including her, were busy. When I pushed, another mutual friend of ours admitted that they all made plans for Sunday Fun Day, but I was purposely excluded because my ex was going to be there. Since it was his friends that planned it, I tried my best to understand, but was hurt Stacy didn't tell me or would agree to go without me. The next day, I chatted with a mutual friend, opening up at how my feelings were hurt that I was excluded. She eventually broke down and told me that Stacy and my ex were seeing each other. It was her idea to do a group outing without me. I can't describe the amount of sadness I felt. Turns out, whenever I was crying on her shoulder, she would use whatever I would tell her about my ex to manipulate him. That's why whenever we had a good talk, I didn't hear from him again. She totally you-know-what blocked us from reconciling, which, in hindsight, was a gift. Now, to the petty revenge part. Stacy didn't have a washer and dryer in her apartment. She had to use the community laundry room that was in the same hall as my apartment. One day when I was walking my dog, I saw her leaving the laundry room and head back upstairs to her place. I checked the laundry room, noticed there were 2 dryers going that just started. I ran into my place and grabbed the brightest red lipstick I could find and several black eyeliner pencils. The 2 loads were whites and lights. I threw the red lipstick into one, the black eyeliner into the other. It felt so good when I left that laundry room. After that, I noticed she would stay in the laundry room and read a book the whole time whenever she did her laundry. It always gave me a smile. I just wonder if they suspect OP was the one who did that, or if they just felt like this was some random person just out to make their day worse. Like, I kind of wonder about the fallout OP and their ex-friend Stacy had, and if that would make Stacy believe, oh, OP definitely did this. Our next story is Peanut Butter Thief. So I used to work some pretty crazy hours trying to balance work, home, and school, city college classes, so I'd constantly need to have snacks on hand and the occasional peanut butter and jelly available. I purchased a loaf of bread every week and stored my peanut butter jar on the top of the fridge and a jar of jam inside the community refrigerator at a machine shop that ran 2 shifts from 5:30 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. Occasionally, someone would pilfer some bread, and although it ticked me off, it wasn't the end of the world. However, it began to increase, and I noticed my peanut butter was going down, down, down. I could never catch the person doing it because I would be forced to drive around Southern California, doing deliveries and pickups at various processing houses for the better part of the day. All I know is when I returned, my supply would be noticeably depleted. I went around and asked everyone on the floor if they were eating it, and nobody admitted to it. The second jar was nearing the halfway mark, when, out of frustration, I just decided to start hawking snot rockets into the peanut butter. I was snorting and spitting very disgusting mucus into the jar in front of my 2 buddies, whom I was pretty sure weren't the culprits, then closed the lid and returned it to the top of the fridge. Next day, sure enough, more was pilfered. So I repeated my disgusting slurry of mucus and booger spit. I didn't bother to stir it up, just left the pile on the surface, closed the lid, and returned it. Several days go by, and lo and behold, I check the jar and it is completely empty. Wow! I then take the empty jar and walk to each workstation to inquire who ate it. And I was super specific about how I fouled up the recipe with my snot rockets. I looked into each person's eyes as I told them what I did, just wanted to see the face of the thief cringe or admit their wrongdoing by making a comment or even trying to attack me. I am 6 foot 6 inches tall, and I am no slouch. So if anyone attempted to retaliate with violence, it would have been a bad day for them. Not one person on either shift ever admitted to the theft, and nobody made any winces or showed any sign of disgust. I never did find out who ate my peanut butter, but it sure was satisfying to tell each and every person about the mistake they made, and after telling every single floor shop employee, I felt a sense of satisfaction that I taught a valuable lesson. By the way, I stopped bringing in peanut butter and jelly since that day, cause I know they would have returned the favor, and mama didn't raise no fool. So my question here is, well, first of all, OP went and said that to every single shop floor employee. Is it possible that it was somebody that wasn't on the floor? Like, could it have been the big boss man, the owner of the shop who came by to pilfer OP supplies every single day? You know, somebody that you just wouldn't have easy access to on the floor. You'd have to actually go find them in their own office or somewhere else. Maybe they're not even there all day. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.